The Chicago Bears match up a lot more poorly with the Green Bay Packers than some of their more recent opponents. And that's what makes this the biggest test yet for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. On the show today, we're going to take a closer look at the bigger picture matchup between the Bears and the Packers and why it feels like some of the things the Packers do well lines up with some of the things the Bears do poorly, and vice versa, where it feels like maybe this matchup isn't super favorable for Chicago in ways that maybe Philadelphia and Pittsburgh the last few weeks have played into the Bears' strengths and weaknesses a little bit better. That doesn't mean the Bears are screwed and the Packers are guaranteed to win, but it does mean it's going to be a little bit bigger of a challenge for this Bears team than maybe they faced the last handful of weeks along this winning streak. So we'll take a look on both sides of the ball, where things might play into the Bears' hands and where things might lean a little bit more into the Packers' favor. And we'll wrap up taking a look at the injury report, where a couple of new injuries popped up that could leave a couple of key Bears playmakers sidelined on Sunday. But let's start with this Bears offense against this Packers defense, because I do think this Packers defense is very good, but I think it's a less advantageous matchup than I think the other way. I think this Packers offense will match up well against this Bears defense that has me concerned. I'm a little bit more confident in this Bears offense. Not to say that they're going to be firing on all cylinders and put up 40 points and have an easy day, but I think there's a little bit less of that concern. But there's still some areas that I think this Packers defense will challenge the Bears in some different ways than we've seen. I mean, obviously you don't have to look any farther than Micah Parsons as, one of the premier pass rushers and elite defensive playmakers in the NFL. And he's someone who, the Green Bay Packers move around a lot between the left and the right side, but they're not afraid to look at an opponent and say, hey, they have a rookie left tackle making his, second, third career start at left tackle, and say, let's put future Hall of Famer Micah Parsons against the rookie second-round pick, who's very clearly the weak link on a strong Chicago Bears offensive line, and attack that matchup over and over again. We haven't seen teams the last few weeks really go after Trapillo in that exact way. I mean, even the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have TJ Watt. They still left him against Darnell Wright all game. And, the Eagles have a good pass rush, but it's not like a Micah Parsons caliber pass rusher in there. We haven't really seen this kind of caliber of pass rusher since, I guess TJ Watt was, but not against the left tackle, right? And even Max Crosby, back then, he was still doing a lot against Darnell Wright either. But this feels like a particularly targeted matchup that we're going to see Green Bay attack Ozzie Trapillo quite a bit. And so it's not that the Bears won't be able to respond to that, prepare for that, and be ready for that, but it's that on top of everything else. I mean, we'll see them slide protections to help Trapillo, leave tight ends, running backs in to help against Micah Parsons. They'll have a plan for that. But it's that on top of then everything else this Bears offense has to be prepared for. This Packers defense doesn't blitz a whole lot, which can open some things up from the Bears perspective that you don't maybe have to be loading up the protection or throwing the pass as quickly as possible. But Green Bay gets a very high rate of pressure while blitzing very sparingly. They don't need to rush more than 4 because they're consistently getting pressure with only a 4-man rush, which makes life more difficult for the Chicago Bears because it's okay, well, at least when they're blitzing, they're going to have fewer guys back in coverage. So if you're going to throw it quickly, there's going to be more space, more room to make plays after the catch. But if they're able to drop 7 into coverage consistently, And if they can get pressure consistently and quickly, then you're getting the worst of both worlds there. And that's a really dangerous thing for a defense here. You also look at Green Bay, and they're a team that doesn't load the box a ton. I mean, compared to other defenses, they absolutely will load the box sometimes, but they're not overly aggressive about it. They're more willing to kind of sit back and say, hey, we'll keep 6 in the box and still stop the run fairly well. I don't think they're an elite run defense, and I think in recent weeks in particular, we've seen them be more vulnerable to explosive runs. I think they've had some injuries that have contributed to that a little bit, and we'll check in on the injury report for both teams later on in the podcast. But still, like I think they're a good run defense that without having to overload. I think if the Bears are firing on all cylinders up front, the way they were against Pittsburgh and the Eagles last week, then the Bears should be able to get their running game going the way that they want to. But like the Packers are going to be able to sit back, not feel like they have to load up the box, and they really will sit back in a lot of zone coverage and take away a lot of what you want to do downfield as a passing game. Like they don't run a lot of man coverage, and that's something that I think it's not that Caleb Williams has been, bad against zone coverage, but he's particularly sharp against man coverage, right? When it's easy to see who's covering who and you can track it all the way across the field. You don't have to second guess like, oh, is there going to be a defender somewhere that I'm not expecting? Well, no, you can read quickly if it's man coverage, single deep, and kind of know, hey, the sidelines are going to be open, and he's particularly good against man coverage. Doesn't mean like he's going to be bad against his own, but just there's going to be fewer easier plays and opportunities for Caleb, right? Fewer blitzes where you have a quick answer. More plays where the 4-man rush generates some pressure. And then like we've seen this season, Caleb has been really good at escaping pressure. But the times when we've seen him struggle to escape pressure or maybe think he can get away but can't has been against the truly elite pass rushers. I think about Max Crosby and TJ Watt as two guys that Caleb tried to get away from and couldn't. Like he's been able to get away from almost everybody except those truly special guys. And I think Micah Parsons falls in that category, and I worry about him running into trouble of thinking he can escape Micah Parsons, and maybe he can every once in a while, but not being able to escape Micah Parsons nearly as regularly and consistently as he thinks he will. While on the back end, you see the Packers mix up their coverages quite a bit. Like it's a lot of zone, but they run more cover 6 than other teams. So they're, the different sides of the field look a little bit differently. Certainly they're going to be plenty of cover 3, but they mix in some cover 2 and some cover 4. They've got great safety play. Like, so when Caleb wants to push it downfield, that's going to be harder. And it just feels like from a defensive scheme standpoint, this game is going to push and challenge Caleb more so than other defenses and schemes have in recent weeks. I think he is fully capable of playing up to that and still playing at a high level, but you also want to just see it, right? Like maybe it ends up being another game where completion percentage isn't anything special, but he makes enough big plays and that's enough to get the job done. But the margin of error is always going to be low in these divisional games, especially when on the other side, I think this Packers offense, its strengths line up well to take advantage of where the Bears defense has struggled in ways that like we didn't see, teams like the Eagles, the Steelers, the Vikings, some of the other recent teams like haven't been attacking the Bears in some of the ways that they have been more vulnerable. So we'll take a look at what to expect from Jordan Love and company and why that side of the ball worries me even a little bit more than what the Bears offense might be able to do next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We know NFL Sundays move fast. That one big play and suddenly everything feels different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. Because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And that live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver starts getting hot, defense tightens up, or momentum flips after a big turnover. But FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment. Whether that's live spreads and money lines that are adjusting instantly or player props that update right as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and so much more. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. This Bears defense ranks low in a lot of categories, but they've been able to generate the kind of like big key stops at key moments plus turnovers to overcome where they might give up a lot of yards and might give up, some field goals and stuff when maybe you don't want them to, but hey, they find a way to pull through. And I worry against this Packers offense whether it may be just a little bit too much for them to be able to pull through. And there's certainly some like Packers PTSD here of like, we always see the Packers play well against the Chicago Bears, but I also think there's some specific aspects of Green Bay's Green Bay's offense that will challenge the Bears defense in some ways that other teams haven't. And it's about some of Jordan Love's strengths and weaknesses in particular, but I also think there's some ways this Bears defense can maybe be a little bit better in an area that they have struggled in the past. But like when I look at this Packers offense, they have been very good this season at big time downfield explosive passing plays. Jordan Love is, we might not want to admit it, but he is in the MVP conversation. He's more in the fringe of the MVP conversation. He's had some inconsistencies in the last couple of games, but like he on the whole makes big plays downfield. They can have an explosive passing offense without having truly elite dynamic receivers. Now they might get Jayden Reed back, which this week, which can absolutely be a bit of a game changer for them in some degree, like that he's been kind of Jordan Love's favorite target and someone who they've been missing, and that's contributed to some of their struggles at times and some of the inconsistency there. But like in particular, you see Jordan Love is lights out attacking deep downfield down the sidelines. Middle of the field, not so much. Like it's there sometimes. It's not that he's bad there, but just like you really see him thrive down the left and right sidelines. That is getting their receivers one-on-one with your cornerbacks. And having Jalen Johnson back healthy and out there alleviates certainly a large part of that concern for the Chicago Bears. I trust Jalen Johnson to cover any of these Packers receivers down the field. Like, there's talent there for sure. Watson, Dobbs, Wicks, Reed, etc. But like, there's not a A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase caliber player in this Packers offense. One-on-one, Jalen Johnson will be fine. Nahshon Wright, on the other hand, I worry about. Because it feels like every game, there's one or two big Nahshon Wright plays allowed down the field that hasn't cost them wins and losses, in large part because he's been able to make up for it with a couple of turnovers. And I think that's going to be particularly important in this game because you have a quarterback who's adept at this with receivers that are, again, not like special game-changing players per se, but like good enough to catch deep balls when Jordan Love throws them accurately downfield. We talked on Wednesday's podcast more in depth about some of this sort of boom and bust aspect of Nahshon Wright. So we're not going to rehash all that in detail here, but like go listen to that if you're confused because Nahshon Wright has a bunch of interceptions, but like he's given up a lot of big plays too. Like leads all cornerbacks in interceptions, leads all cornerbacks in touchdowns allowed this season. And so like I fear that he's going to allow one or two big plays in this game, and he has to make up for those with a big interception, a big forced fumble, a big something to counterbalance that. And he's been able to do that enough this season. It's extra important in this game against the Green Bay Packers. You also look at Jordan Love, and he's someone who has been really great from a clean pocket this season. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when he's not under pressure. A lot worse when under pressure, and like particularly worse when he's under pressure. A lot of quarterbacks are worse under pressure. He's been even more so than other guys, a bigger drop-off when under pressure. The problem is, as we know, this Chicago Bears pass rush has been pretty inconsistent, and especially when it's a four-man rush, it's been downright bad. Like they have not been able to consistently pressure the quarterback with a four-man rush. And so Dennis Allen then has become one of the highest blitzing defensive coordinators in football the last month. I think the Bears are third in the last 4 weeks in blitz rate in the NFL to try and generate a pass rush. The problem is Jordan Love has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL against the blitz this season. So it's like he's really good when he's clean, but then when you blitz him, he's also really good. So like he not only struggles, but like the secret there, obviously, then is get pressure on him without blitzing. But every team, every defense is trying to get pressure without blitzing. Like that's the goal every single week. Like it's not easy. And so the question is like, what do you do then? Pick your poison, right? He's been really good against the blitz. So if you blitz him, he might beat that up. But then if you don't blitz and you're just rushing 4 and he's not under pressure, then he's going to slice you up because he's not under pressure. So like, how do you balance that? And I think for Dennis Allen, it's about knowing when and where to blitz. And I think it's worth noting that when we say Jordan Love has been one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz, he is still better, or let me rephrase this. He is still worse when you blitz him than when you don't blitz him. It's just not as big of a drop-off as any other quarterback. It is still worth blitzing Jordan Love, but I think you have to be particularly strategic about it and particularly efficient with it. If you just blitz him all the time, he'll see it coming and get the ball quickly behind defense. Matt LaFleur schemes it up really well to beat the blitz, right? So you can't just spam it at him. But I think Dennis Allen has been good at knowing when and how and where to bring the blitz. I think that worked well against Jalen Hurts, where it was like Hurts was really good from a clean pocket when the Bears didn't blitz him. But even when they blitzed him, it wasn't getting pressure, but it was throwing him off a little bit. And they need to be able to do the same thing against Jordan Love. I just think the quarterback matchup there isn't as favorable from where the Bears defense works there. I think the good news is that on the Packers offensive line has more weakness than some of the other offensive lines the Bears have played in recent weeks. Particularly the interior of this Packers offensive line is definitely a weakness, where you've got the left guard, Aaron Banks, was their prized free agent signing, spent a bunch of money on him. He's really underwhelmed and been a lot less than they thought he would be, and a vulnerability. Not like worst guard in football, but just not nearly as good as they need him to be, and more vulnerable than the tackles. Then their normal starting center is injured, on injured reserve, I think out for the season, or at least certainly not going to play in this game, Elton Jenkins. I think he might be designated to return eventually. Not important for our purposes. They got a backup center in there, Sean Ryan, who was their starting right guard. So they had to move, well, he kind of started a couple of guard spots, but essentially didn't move a guard to center to fill in for the injured center. And he's been less than stellar at center in there. And then right now they're going with a rookie right guard, Anthony Belton, second round pick, but like he's had some normal rookie struggles in there as well. So like their tackles, Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom, have been pretty consistent. I'm not expecting Austin Booker and Joe Tryon to have some big games opposite Montez Sweat, but you absolutely need Gervon Dexter, Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings to generate more pressure consistently up the middle than we've been seeing from them in recent weeks. Like they need to play better. And if the Bears aren't getting that kind of pressure, I think that can be a big difference maker in this game. If they're getting Dexter and Jarrett and Billings disrupting the middle of the pocket, that's going to slow down this Packers offense a lot. If the middle of the pocket's nice and clean, the Bears defense is going to have some trouble. I would expect Dennis Allen to bring more of those blitzes on the interior, as opposed to like, he likes to bring the slot cornerback off the edge. These tackles have been good. And it's not to say he shouldn't blitz the slots off the edge at all, but like I think there's more effectiveness potentially up the middle, trying to confuse those guys who they've had to move around in some different spots, and now a rookie communicating with a backup or with a guard playing center. Like that's where I would prefer to attack this Packers offensive line, and where I think the Bears can find some kind of advantage. And then on the back end, I think you got to have your cornerbacks play pretty far off, take away the deep ball and say, hey, Green Bay has to beat us underneath with the quick passes, and make them complete 4-yard passes at a time. Make you have to throw 10 passes to get downfield, these long drives, and wait for Jordan Love to try and make a mistake in there, I think is much better than like, you can't risk big play, deep balls downfield that I think can blow some things up for your defense. So I think that's how the Bears need to approach it. And I think it's going to challenge this defense in some ways that recent opponents have not been able to. Even as the level of competition has gone up, just scheme and matchup wise, it's been other teams of the Steelers and Eagles in particular played more into the Bears' hands of like not really attacking the weaknesses in some of the ways that Green Bay's naturally been good at attacking, where Chicago has struggled. Then you add in the injuries that the Bears are dealing with. Generally healthier than they've been, but some new injuries popping up that'll create some new challenges for Ben Johnson and Chicago. We'll take a look at what we know after Thursday's injury report and where that might leave things heading into Sunday next on Locked On Bears. generally speaking, I mean, injuries have been an ongoing storyline for the Bears this season. And like we came into this week 14 matchup feeling like this could be as healthy as the Bears have been all season, right? You've got Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon are pretty much 100%. Tyree Stevenson's been out a couple weeks. You're hoping he could get healthier. The linebackers, you're thinking they're about due to be a little bit healthier too. And like no one left last week against the Eagles with some kind of big, serious carted off the field type of injury. So it feels like, okay, things have been trending in the right direction. Well, the injury report this week had a couple of new ones pop up that kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but we weren't necessarily expecting to be like serious, potentially sidelining players for Sunday, and other guys maybe haven't progressed as much as you like. And I think that'll create some new wrinkles that might not be might not be the difference between winning and losing this game. It could be. I mean, if everything goes poorly and guys don't practice Friday and then a bunch of guys are all out on Sunday, absolutely could be the difference between winning and losing this game, but will certainly shape the Bears' game plan on both sides of the ball. But particularly, I think offense is where the biggest concern is right now, because through Wednesday and Thursday's practice, Rome Odunze has not participated with a foot injury. And I don't recall him leaving the Philadelphia Eagles game with any kind of like serious foot injury. I remember him playing that game through to the end, and maybe I'm missing something in my memory. Earlier in the season, he was dealing with a heel injury, but he wasn't on the injury report the last two games for anything foot or for anything, let alone foot or heel related. So I'm not sure if this is a new foot injury that he sort of suffered against the Eagles, played through the end of that game and just kind of dealt with it. And now it's becoming more of a problem, or if this is a continuation of whatever the heel thing was. I mean, this says foot and not heel, so I don't know if that's different. But nonetheless, when Rome Odunze misses 2 games of practice out of nowhere, or 2 days of practice ahead of the game, that leaves you real concerned that he might not be able to go on Sunday. And that would leave you with, still DJ Moore and Luther Burden, and then, Olamide Zaccheaus. But Rome Odunze leads the Bears in targets. I mean, he's been Caleb Williams' most go-to receiver. I know in the last handful of weeks, he hasn't been as productive with those targets. There have been a couple of drop passes, some miscommunications with the quarterback, but still, there's no downplaying how important Rome Odunze is to this offense. And even if hasn't been reeling in everything, he'll still make a huge play here or there. Against the Steelers, it was 3 catches for 53 yards, but, had a 22-yarder in there. And against the Vikings, it was 2 catches, but it was a 24-yard catch. And then Quick Math says a 17-yard catch. Even if the impact is a little bit smaller in total volume, the moment-to-moment impact is it's a big third down and the ball goes to Rome Odunze. I feel like I don't have to explain too much why not having Rome Odunze out there would be a problem, even with the more recent decline in production. He can be someone who takes a lot of attention, even if he's not always getting the ball. That would be a big deal. It's not going to derail the whole Bears offense. You have a lot of depth in pass catchers. Maybe you have to use double tight ends a little bit more. Running back's a little bit more involved. But running back on the injury report, Kyle Monangai pops up with DNP on Wednesday, limited on Thursday with an ankle injury. The fact that he gets upgraded from DNP to limited helps me feel a little bit better about his odds of playing on Sunday, but it's still definitely a maybe at this point because, just because you don't know how Friday's going to go as we record this Thursday night. And given how important he has been in a growing role in this backfield, he has started getting more carries every game than DeAndre Swift, kind of quietly. I think against the Eagles, he technically played fewer total snaps because Swift was more involved in the passing game, but this is much more of a 50-50 running back split than it was when the season started. And again, is losing Monangai going to derail the whole Bears offense? Potentially, no. Is it going to undo their whole rushing attack? No, but much rather go into Green Bay with 2 running backs I really like than 1 running back I really like, because you don't really have anybody else that you really like in the backfield right now. If Roschon Johnson's on injured reserve, so if Monangai doesn't play, it'd be Travis Homer would be your number 2 running back, and I guess I was going to say they would call up Britton Brown from the practice squad, I guess, but that's not somebody against Green Bay I want to see. I mean, he got the job done earlier in the season, but it's just a tricky thing when you're missing your top players in the backfield. The Bears kind of got away with putting him on waivers and getting him back on the practice squad, that no one else would come up and swoop him up by any means. But hey, I want as full strength of an offense as I can get against the Green Bay Packers. The good news is that your linebackers are getting healthier. Nothing's locked in or guaranteed right now, but from an injury report standpoint, Noah Sewell, full participant at practice both Wednesday and Thursday, and TJ Edwards limited on Wednesday and Thursday. That's definitely progress from the last couple of weeks when he's been pretty much a DNP player. Limited both days is not full participant. Like, that doesn't signal for sure he's for sure going to play. Like, if he's a full participant on Friday, then call him good to go. He's playing on Sunday. If he's limited, I'm sure he'll be then questionable, and they'll see how he warms up on Sunday and then decide from there. But would absolutely prefer to have TJ Edwards back in the middle of this defense to slow down Josh Jacobs, to maybe bring that blitz up the middle a little bit more effectively than DeMarco Jackson and Eamon Onbagbamiga. I mean, certainly we're going to see Noah Sewell back there, so that's a potential upgrade, certainly in the running game at least. We'll see pass coverage-wise. I have my concerns there, but that's probably a broader topic for another day. But, like, there's some progress at linebacker. We will see how much, but that can be a big swing for this Bears defense. You know, trying to slow down the run and trying to match up better with what this Packers offense is going to do. Tyreek Stevenson still not practicing, not expecting him to play. It'll be Jalen Johnson, Deshaun Wright, Kyler Gordon, CJ Gardner-Johnson, again at cornerback. Nothing new there, so nothing to panic about, but just kind of a quick update there. And same thing with Ruben Hippolyte at linebacker. Presumably with Edwards and Sewell being healthier, he wouldn't really be a big factor anyway, but not participating, not likely to play. The Packers, on the other hand, got a little bit of bad news. They generally have been doing well on the injury report, but their slot cornerback, Javon Bullard, kind of a converted safety, he got downgraded from limited to DNP on Thursday. So they could be a little bit more banged up in the slot cornerback position, where it becomes tougher because if Rome Odunze doesn't play, then Burden has to play more on the outside, which means Zacchaeus has to play more in the slot, which makes a better matchup for Zacchaeus, I guess. But, like, I would rather have the better matchup for Luther Burden in the slot. Or if Odunze is playing, then DJ Moore can play more in the slot. But because Odunze is such a primary outside receiver, if he's gone, some of your guys who might play some slot have to play more on the outside, which leaves more for Odunze in the slot. More for Zacchaeus in the slot. Less than ideal, but, you know, any kind of added weakness to Green Bay's defense is a plus for the Chicago Bears. They're hoping to get linebacker Quay Walker back from injury this week. And Packers fans are, you know, celebrating that as a victory, and maybe he's definitely better than their backups. I think Isaiah McDuffie has been playing for them, but, like, I don't think Quay Walker is all that great either. I mean, kind of like Noah Sewell for them, where, like, yeah, there's some plays there, but, like, he's very athletic. He's not Noah Sewell physically at all, but just, like, in terms of, like, perception versus reality there, like, very athletic, but just gets washed up and blocks quite a bit and isn't as instinctual. He's a little bit more Ruben Hippolyte, just older and deeper into his career and definitely more talented. But, like, I think that's still a weak link the Bears can attack, especially if he's not 100%. He's coming off a stinger, so it's not like a soft tissue thing per se, or like a mobility thing, but still, I would look to attack somebody like Quay Walker. And I know the Packers have a couple guys who've been injured recently that they're not expecting back, Lucas Van Ness and Devontae Wyatt up front. Again, leaving them a little bit thinner on the defensive line, but not unexpected changes there. So injuries are definitely going to be a factor for both teams. You can't sit here and complain about, the Bears are somehow disproportionately affected by injuries, but definitely some newer ones for Chicago than what Green Bay is dealing with, and the absences of Odunze and then maybe Monangai or maybe TJ Edwards still, we'll see, but those could weigh heavily. We'll definitely want to keep a close eye on Friday's injury report to see how that might affect Sunday's game. Whoever plays, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. If you're looking for a second listen today, maybe you can stomach Locked On Packers to just get the latest on the Bears' opponent on Sunday. If not, you can always check out Locked On NFL for more football talk, or any of our Locked On Podcast Network podcasts for any of your other favorite teams in the NBA, NHL, MLB, college sports, you name it. We've got you covered across all of your sports fandoms. Just make sure you come back on Monday, make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.